Eukaryotic cells we refer to as the most complex type of cell. The main reason why we say they're the most complex is they contain something we refer to as membrane-bound organelles. So these parts within the cell, they're kind of like miniature organs. They've got different roles in the cell and they're bound by membranes. So they're surrounded by a membrane and they have different jobs, and they add to this overall complexity of eukaryotic cell. We also see eukaryotic cells size-wise being between about 10 and 100 micrometers, with 100 micrometer cells being things like mesophyll cells in plants. They're really big photosynthesizing cells. They have linear DNA and also are usually part of multicellular organisms. So whereas prokaryotic cells are unicellular, so one prokaryotic cell is considered one organism, most eukaryotic cells make up multicellular organisms. We do see some like yeast, which are single-celled eukaryotic organisms, unicellular eukaryotic organisms. Mostly eukaryotic cells are found in multicellular organisms with different types of eukaryotic cells. So some of the key parts of eukaryotic cells are things like the nucleus. So the nucleus is where chromosomes are located. It's also where things like DNA replication and transcription occur, which are important processes within the cell. And it's kind of the overall control center, I guess you could say, of the cell. We've also got the part called the nucleolus. Now the nucleolus contains genes which program for synthesizing rRNA, so ribosomal RNA, which we need to make ribosomes, which are part of protein synthesis. We have a mitochondrion, so this little part, this squiggly sort of green bit on this diagram here, is involved in ATP synthesis, so making energy for the cell. We've also got what's the next part? The Golgi body. So once again, this sort of folded, squiggly looking bit down there, purpley grey kind of in this diagram. So the Golgi body helps in the sort of the modifying and the changing and twisting and packaging of proteins, and puts them into these things called vesicles, which is little sacs made up of membranous material, I guess you could say, and then they are secreted, packaged up, and sent to the cell membrane to be secreted out of the cell. So they change and modify proteins and package them up into vesicles to send away. We also have the endoplasmic reticulum. So this can be divided up into the smooth endoplasmic reticulum and the rough endoplasmic reticulum. The rough endoplasmic reticulum generally is personified by having ribosomes attached to it. So we say it's rough. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum doesn't have the ribosomes, so it doesn't have that roughness to us. It's smooth, we call it. So these are membranous systems, and in the rough ER, the ribosomes are a site of protein synthesis. All right, the smooth ER doesn't have doesn't have those ribosomes for the protein synthesis. So the main roles of the endoplasmic reticulum are in the synthesis of proteins and the synthesis of phospholipids, okay, which are a type of fat, made up of type of fat. We also see these things called lysosomes. So lysosomes are only found in animal cells, like the one pictured there in blue. Lysosomes contain enzymes, and they're kind of like waste storage, I guess you could say. Enzymes that help digest old organelles and molecules and things like that need to be broken down into molecules, into smaller molecules, and then gotten rid of. And last little bit here is, it's not going to be labelled on here, but last bit is something called the cytoskeleton. So the cytoskeleton is this framework that runs all throughout the cell. So it's a network of protein fibers, and it helps different things occur within the cell, such as cell division, so pulling parts of the cell to opposite poles so it can divide, and also helping to pinch the cell in that division, and also to do with movement, transporting things around the cells, within the cell itself, and moving the cell around, especially if it's attached to a flagellum, which is kind of like a tail, which can help the cell move. So that was, I should have labelled it. So this here is an animal cell. So all those things that I've mentioned are contained in an animal cell, with something such as was it the one here? A lysosome is kind of unique to an animal cell. Whereas all those other parts that I talked about are actually shared by plant cells as well. So everything apart from the lysosome that I've mentioned above is found as well in a plant cell, except we see chloroplasts. Chloroplasts being unique to plant cells. The reason why they're unique to plant cells is because they are these photosynthetic organelles and they are involved in photosynthesis. So plants photosynthesize and animals do not. So plant cells contain chloroplasts, which are the site of photosynthesis. Another little difference is vacuoles. So did I label that, Bob? No, it's not labelled on there. Animal cells do have these little vacuoles, whereas a plant cell has this unique, really big vacuole. And what vacuoles do is they hold water and nutrients. They're kind of like a storage system. Animal cells have these little storage systems, little vacuoles. Plant cells has this nice big one to store lots of water and lots of nutrients. The last thing is, I will go back up to the animal cell here. The one thing that I didn't remember is plasma membrane or a cell membrane. So this is the outer coating of the cell. The boundary of the cell is this semi-permeable plasma membrane, which allows things to enter or exit and controls that within the cell. This is also present in plant cells. It's got this plasma membrane as well, but plant cell, on top of that plasma membrane, has a cell wall which encompasses that membrane, the entire cell. So the cell wall gives it this structure and rigidity that the animal cell kind of doesn't. So when you look at plant cells, they look a bit more sort of structured and grid-like under a microscope than animal cells might. So those are the main points to remember about plant cells and animal cells, which all come under the category, both come under the category of eukaryotic cells because they contain membrane-bound organelles. They're of size about 10 to 100 micrometers. They have linear DNA, and they usually make up multicellular organisms.